Success is built on great ideas. However, the actual application of these ideas is essential to the amount of success that will ultimately result from them. Buddhism is a fascinating thought tradition that people have tried applying to politics many times, but none have been able to construct a government that both practices and preaches all aspects of the Buddhists' worldviews. However, governments often incorporate many Buddhist practices and teachings into the overall framework of their ideas. The only flaws in these systems are their inhabitants. Two examples of Buddhism being applied to politics are Japanese shoguns and Tibetan Buddhism's Dalai Lama. A shogunate is a feudal military dictatorship controlled by shoguns. The name shogun dates back to a title given to military rulers who fought against the Ainu in 794 CE. With no choice, the emperor acknowledges every new shogun, a position which is passed down lineally from one generation to the next. The only way for a person who is not of the descent of the royal family to become a shogun is to marry into or conquer the ruling family. The form of government used by a shogun is called a bakufu, which literally translates to tent government. In this form of government, positions of power are attained based on duration of service, the extent of one's abilities, and overall knowledge. Generally speaking, the jobs go to the individuals who are most qualified for performing them. The distribution of power is simple. The emperor owns everything, but plays a nominal role to the shogun, who exercises absolute power through the emperor. The nation is divided into separate territories, much like the many states of America. These smaller states are ruled by daimyos, or protectors, who operate under the authority of the shogun, much like governors do in America. The separate daimyos can apply slightly different laws to their lands, but only if they are okayed by the shogun. The samurai, a people from the Kanto Plains, were those who enforced the power of the shoguns, similar to how modern-day policemen enforce the laws of our government. In a feudal government such as the shogunate, where governments are constantly being attacked and overthrown, one can stay in power only as long as they have the support of their people. Because of this, shoguns are known for persecuting random religions that pose as a potential threat to gain supporters of a different idea. The reason of this being that they could one day try to overthrow the shogun. Three families make up the history of the shogun in Japan. Those are the Kamakura, the Ashikaga, and the Tokugawa family, who ruled from 1185 to 1333 CE, 1336 to 1573 CE, and 1603 to 1868 CE, respectively. The Kamakura clan was established when Minamoto no Yorimoto and his army of samurai defeated the Taira in the Genpei War of 1185 CE. The samurai were an aristocratic warrior class that arose during that time as a result of small towns merging together for protection. Larger establishments led to the specification of trades, with the samurai being fighting specialists. Yorimoto established a form of government known as bakufu. The title of shogun was held by the Minamoto family and their successors until the Keimu Restoration. The Keimu Restoration, spanning from 1333 to 1336 CE, saw a brief return to the former aristocratic method of ruling. Failed attempts to conquer China left the Kamakura shogunate weakened and too poor to reward its loyal citizens for their services. The imperial family, led by Emperor Go-Daigo, rallied supporters to fight the weakened Kamakura clan in order to regain control of Japan. Two brothers, Ashikaga Tadayoshi and Ashikaga Takauji, played an important role in the imperial family's defeat of the Kamakura clan. One of those brothers, Ashikaga Tadayoshi, eventually killed Prince Morinaga, the son of Go-Daigo, resulting in the brief rule of the Muromachi shogunate, which was controlled by both Ashikaga brothers. The two brothers fought amongst themselves for total power, with Ashikaga Takauji eventually emerging victorious. Takauji then established a new shogunate, the Ashikaga shogunate, and appointed his own puppet emperor. This marked the end of the Keimu Restoration and the beginning of the rule of the Ashikaga clan. The Ashikaga clan, whose family claimed to be the descendants of Minamoto princes, re-established the rule of the shogunate in Japan in 1336 CE. This shogunate marked the beginning of its rule by moving the capital city of Japan to Kyoto. It also shared more power with the imperial government than any other shogunate had in the past or ever did in the future. However, feuds among the daimyos eventually led to false alliances, civil war, and the eventual fall of the Ashikaga clan at the hands of Oda Nobunaga. Oda Nobunaga is the man who began the unification of Japan. Fearing the future of Japan under the rule of the Ashikaga shogunate, the emperor appointed Oda Nobunaga dictator of Japan so that he would help rid the emperor of the Ashikaga shogunate. Oda Nobunaga did this with the help of his general Toyotomo Hideyoshi and allied daimyo Tokugawa Ieyasu. Sadly, Nobunaga committed suicide before he ever saw his dream of a unified Japan realized. Following Nobunaga's death, Tokugawa Ieyasu and Hideyoshi fought each other in the Battle of Nagakute to see who would succeed Nobunaga and control his forces. This was the only time that any of the three unifiers of Japan fought amongst themselves. Despite winning the battle against Hideyoshi, Ieyasu realized that he would most likely be defeated if he continued fighting, so he decided to compromise with Hideyoshi. Ieyasu would vow his loyalty to Hideyoshi if, in return, Hideyoshi would make peace and adopt Ieyasu's son, Tokugawa Hidetada. This would ensure that the Tokugawa family would rule Japan following Hideyoshi's eventual death. The terms were agreed upon, and the two set off to conquer the remainder of Japan. The great feat was finally accomplished when, following Hideyoshi's death, Tokugawa Ieyasu destroyed all of the rival daimyos in Japan. Following the establishment of the Tokugawa shogunate, the capital of Japan was once again moved, this time to Yedo, modern-day Tokyo, where it still resides today. The Tokugawa clan ruled Japan until 1868. Oda Nobunaga and Tokugawa Ieyasu embodied the model shogun. Oda Nobunaga was a brutal conqueror, having a reputation for being one of the most ferocious period of the Sengoku period, a military genius, and an effective politician. Nobunaga was one of the first Japanese generals to arm his troops with muskets. Nobunaga also expanded the use of long pikes, ironclad ships, and castle fortifications in response to the mass battles characteristic of that period. After overthrowing the Shikaga shogunate, he built roads in between castle towns that both facilitated trade and allowed armies to cover long distances in short periods of time. Nobunaga also instituted the Rakuichi Rakuza policies, which abolished and prohibited monopolies and opened once closed and privileged unions, associations, and guilds as a way to stimulate business and the overall economy. Nobunaga did this because he saw those things as impediments to commerce. Nobunaga is also responsible for the destruction of the militant Tendai monks of the Enryaku temple and the extermination of many other religious forces as well. These actions were completely political, many resulting in Western customs making their way to Japan. Nobunaga committed suicide following an attempt on his life by one of his generals during the unification of Japan. Tokugawa Ieyasu is another perfect example of a shogun, cautious, wise, and brutal. Ieyasu was a self-proclaimed descendant of the Minamoto clan, but there is no evidence to affirm or deny this claim. Being the product of a time characterized by assassinations and war, Ieyasu killed any person that ever posed as a threat to him. Ieyasu wasn't particularly liked, but his wisdom and aggressiveness brought him ample amounts of respect and fear, allowing him to rule effectively. Ieyasu did a lot of good things for Japan, like introducing Confucianism to strengthen the state, encouraging foreign trade, and building the imperial palace which still stands today. Buddhist customs were used in shogun politics more as a means to control the population and form a working government than as a way of life. First and foremost, the very idea that people are fighting to gain power is against Buddhist teachings. Then, following the establishment of that power, it is held through paranoid assassinations and often brutal enforcement of laws. Shoguns typically prefer to be feared than loved, and the best leaders are the most ruthless, because with this type of person in power, no one will challenge him for fear of his wrath. These times of peace that come as a result produce times of great prosperity if the shogun is at all conscious of the economy. Also, the position of shogun is passed lineally, not according to the person most qualified. This results in inconsistent policies that would otherwise be preserved if positions of power were given to those who share the same ideas of a collected group, like one of religion. Other positions of power, on the contrary, are given to those who are most deserving and have served the longest. This is similar to the Buddhist tradition, where those who have studied Buddhism for longer hold a higher status in a school than those who have not studied its practices for the equal amount of time. In both cases, loyalty and vigilance are rewarded. However, in the case of a shogun, this is done to keep his alliances with the daimyos intact. If loyalty and hard work weren't rewarded, the shogun would lose the trust of his daimyos, which could then possibly separate from and fight against him. The imperial family did this to the Kamakura clan when, weakened by war, they couldn't reward or support their daimyos for fighting. Buddhism can be seen as merely a way to control the population for the fact that it wasn't the only religion incorporated in Japan. Confucianism was used to strengthen the state. Zen beliefs were introduced as well for its calming meditative practices. The main goal of Buddhism in Japan was to use it to establish a class system from which labor could be assigned. Religions of any type made people unified, which was good for the economy of a shogun as long as it didn't oppose his rule. Buddhism was also incorporated into the Bushido to reduce the amount of unnecessary torturing and killing done by the samurai. The simple fact that the samurai kill people makes it impossible to say that they embody all respected Buddhist practices. Samurai could believe in the Pure Land doctrine, where, by praying and recognizing what they're doing is wrong, the samurai attain nirvana. Beliefs like these were allowed because they did nothing to challenge the rule of the shogun, and, if anything, made it easier for the people to enforce laws with more viciousness, because they could become cleansed of their wrongdoings. The Buddhist belief about reincarnation and rebirth kept one aware that what goes around comes around, in this life or the next. As a result of this, some samurai even denounced their positions and became Buddhist monks. The acceptance of other religions is also a topic in which shogunate customs don't coincide